You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 on Instagram and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold, episode 39. Today we welcome in Eloa Celedon, immigration attorney in Marlborough, Mass. Not far from where I'm located, actually. How are you doing today, Eloa?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good. Thanks for joining us. It's nice that we finally connected the schedules and are able to record the podcast today.
Yes, I'm also thankful, and thank you for making the time.
Yeah, for sure. So we featured you, just to jump right into your story, we featured you January 5th of this year, 2021, and lawyer_stories on Instagram, also on Facebook, for people out there who aren't familiar. And very compelling story. You began by telling us that you were born in Brazil to Chilean parents.
Correct.
And then in 1992, they planted a church in Massachusetts. So you kind of ended up over in Massachusetts. Like, tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about almost 30 years ago.
Yeah, it was 92, right. 1992.
Yeah, so time does fly. That's interesting.
That was the year when, like, the Dream Team with, like, Larry Bird and, like, Michael.
Yeah.
That was, anyway. So,
that's right.
Go ahead. All right, so go ahead. Anyway, planting a church.
Remember the TLC music, the group.
Oh, yeah, TLC, waterfalls and all that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. So memory
no
lane.
Scrubs, too. I think No Scrubs was also a
song. Scrubs, that's a good one.
Okay.
We should play that one later.
Yeah, we will.
So interesting. So my parents, they're from Chile. They decided to immigrate to Brazil in the 70s. I was born in the 80s, and I was 8 years old when my dad decided to make that bold move to Massachusetts. I'll never forget my, arrival to Boston Airport, the JFK. And my dad came, he actually arrived a few months before we did. And he came running to us holding these snow jackets. I never had a snow jacket my entire life. And it was snowing outside because it was in January. And I recall looking at it, it had like all the colors you can think of. And I was this really tanned little girl. And I had this like all colored, like bright colors snow coat, and I walked out of there and I saw snow for the very first time, my very first day in the US. So around that year, my dad, because he was a minister.
So like, just to back up a second, like, do you know why they chose Massachusetts and not like Pennsylvania or like New York or anywhere else?
Yeah, so my dad had a friend, interesting enough, so-called friend, who was supposed to meet him at the airport a few months back, and before we arrived, and that friend never showed up to pick him up in Boston. So he had a friend who had moved to Boston years before my dad decided to come, and it was interesting because he was not there to pick him up. So my dad pretty much was kind of like, okay, I'm on my own. If I find myself in an apartment.
Wow.
So he
That's
did have.
You don't have cell phones, so it's not like, hey, I'll be there in like 20 minutes, It's like they probably called each other on the payphone like 5 days prior.
Yeah. So you may hear my dog, by the way, Ben.
That's okay.
Chow.
We're dog friendly here at Lawyer Stories, so that's okay.
Yeah. I'll share a picture of her. So he birthed a beautiful church in Westboro, Mass. And for many years, he was the pastor there.
So he founded or he like built it?
He founded it. And it's funny because we were the first members his wife and 3 kids. I'm the youngest of 3.
Okay.
And my dad was very smart. So he was like, you know what? We're a family and I'm going to have each of you kids learn an instrument. So I'll never forget at 9 years old, I had 2 piano teachers. I had a classical piano teacher. So it was a classic music, and I had a worship piano teacher. So he would teach me worship songs. And so my dad was very religious in getting us to learning instruments and to making sure we were all together in this band. So that way, Ben, I'm getting interrupted. Hold on.
Okay.
Give me a second. Sorry.
I'll pause it. It's okay. Okay, go ahead.
So I had to learn the piano, and my brother had to learn the bass and the guitar, and my sister, who had a really nice voice, she was the singer. So, and my dad played the guitar. So we were the worship band in our church. My dad would be the preacher. And then as slowly and that church flourished.
Did you actually build the church? Like build it? Like how do you build
No, so he found this church through some connections that he had as well. And the American Baptist Church was the organization that sponsored. And through that organization is how we were able to obtain a religious visa, because we first came with the tourist visa, and then we were able to change to a religious visa. Then we're able to obtain our green card. And then we're all now US citizens. Yeah.
Okay. So that goes into the later piece of why you went into immigration.
Yes. Yes.
So before we get there, so like you're playing in the band with your family.
Yeah.
You're a piano player.
Yeah.
So you immersed yourself in service.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. Like you were at the church and you're just, you totally like devoted yourself to service, right? Is that?
Yes, such a young age. I was the Bible school teacher in my early teens, played in the worship team pretty much until the age of 21. And then, things change. I started to have other responsibilities, but my entire life as a child and teenager and right through college, I would dedicate most of my life in church and helping my dad. Yeah.
Right. That's amazing. And you ended up going to Assumption College, right?
Yeah. So I chose Assumption, and the reason, and really one of the main reasons, was because of the flexibility in schedule. So because my parents were community oriented, they weren't able to really build any wealth. My parents are the most selfless people you'll ever meet. They're the kind of parents that during Christmas time, we each had a gift or present, but then we had gifts for other children.
Okay.
And so throughout my life with my parents, we were pretty much running just a life of service. So when I looked into Assumption, they had a night program that was affordable. I had some scholarships and obviously some grants, and I was able to work full time. So I had to, so that way I can pay for my books, I can pay for my gas, I can pay for my car.
Amazing. And you lived with them, you said? I
lived with them, yes. So I would go to night class.
What town were they in at that time?
So at that time, they were living in Worcester. So it'd be like a very easy commute.
It's a short commute, yeah. Assumption's right around here, actually.
And a beautiful campus.
Beautiful campus. I mean, I've driven by it several times. I've never driven through it. It looks like they have it's gated now. They have a guard or something, but I think it's Assumption University now.
Yes, they're now Assumption University. That's correct.
That's great. So you have really a theme, actually throughout your life, because you, at the end of your experience at Assumption, you got a job as a paralegal, right? And you were working on humanitarian cases. Anytime I see that word with associated with a person, it's sort of wow, what kind of work are they doing? So I'm totally curious about that.
Yeah. So around 2004, interesting. I was not, between 2003 and 2004, I was not interested in the paralegal or legal type of work. I actually wanted to become a news anchor. I wanted to go into the television. I was like, oh, that was my dream. However, because, I wanted to have a job that would pretty much had to do with, what I was doing already as a pastor kid and growing up with service. In the meantime, I said, what, why don't I work for a nonprofit? I ended up in the legal department. And within 3 months, the paralegal in that department had accepted a job somewhere else. So they looked at me and they said, "Oh, you're the paralegal now."
Wow.
And so I took the job and I pretty much never left the legal field since then.
Wow. Tell me again, where was that exactly?
So that was, at the time, the name was Lutheran Social Services. They're now called Centria. So they still work primarily with humanitarian cases, with refugees, folks seeking, TPS, which is temporary protected status, asylum, citizenship, victims of domestic violence. So they have really programs geared towards humanitarian work.
Wow. Okay. So what would any notable cases there that you want to tell us about?
So I recall one time, and this is really what was the impetus of like my interest in the legal career. So I was managing, and I was also the paralegal in the legal department. I was, as a paralegal, you prep the work for the attorneys. And we had a client, an uncle, who had a niece in Liberia.
Right.
And her parents had passed away. So she was an orphan. And she was in a refugee camp in Ivory Coast. And at the time, and still today, for folks to come in without a visa, where they're allowed to come in, even with the visas, there's certain restrictions sometimes for entries. She was on a really long wait list. And I recall the attorney at the time that I absolutely love, and she's still a very good mentor. And I said to her, "How are we going to get this little girl here?" And she said, "Eloa, it's going to be impossible. It's not really something that we couldn't help them." And I said,
"This was the attorney talking to you at the time, like."
Yeah. She's like, "But you can try a document called a travel document, advancing her, paroling her in the U.S." And she said, "But you're going to have to get the congressman involved. You're going to have to make sure the uncle gets at least, like, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 letters of support. And it's really a long shot. So don't give them any hope, because the chances are quite slim." And that's what I did. And we were able to gather the documents and prepare the case, and it was approved. And we were able to get her into the country. And so that was really sparked, like, you know what I do, yes, I think it helps with those that are here, but there's such a huge need. There's so much like crisis out there, not only in the US, but outside of the US, where it really just birthed into me the desire to continue to do. And I'm still doing that work today.
Yeah.
I'm still calling Warrens, Markey's, the Jim McGovern's office, and still doing what I was taught to do back then.
Yeah, no. So that's amazing. So like, while you're talking about that, like, tell us about Celedon Law and and your like day to day, like, how long have you been practicing? Like,
oh God. Yeah, it's funny now. You think because we're in the legal field, and people are like, "Wow, you look so young." Well, so prior to becoming an attorney, I was a paralegal for close to almost 15 years.
Oh, wow.
I've been practicing for almost 5 years.
Okay.
And I worked initially when I first passed the bar for an attorney who's pretty much I would say, what really pushed me to be creative. And he is definitely someone I still call today and I say, "Hey, what do you think about this case?" Because he really thinks outside of the box kind of attorney.
Yep.
And so my first week actually working for his firm, I was already in front of an immigration judge. And so it was a very different experience because I was behind the scenes. I was a paralegal for so long. I was prepping the cases. Now I'm just before the judge and advocating, litigating. And thankfully we won that case. So it was actually a good memory. And it's actually not one that I could say I was so traumatic because we lost the case, but it actually was a type of case. And because it was so complex, I was able to say to myself, okay, if I can do this, I think there's possibilities to win other types of difficult cases. So unfortunately, because there was a really long commute to his office, I talked to him and I said, I think I might be opening my own office. What do you think? And I was a little bit hesitant because I thought to myself, he opened the doors for me.
Yeah.
He trained me. He's, so happy with that I'm there because I speak Portuguese and Spanish. And
you had been there were you with him 15 years? Like all that?
No, with him, I was, as an attorney, I was there for almost 6 months.
Oh, as an attorney.
So when I spoke to him, and I really had at heart to be transparent and to really share my dreams,
right?
Because he allowed that. And he was that kind of employer, that I could sense, if I tell him what I really would like to do. And so when I had that conversation with him, he said, Eloa, I'm glad you made that decision, because I wish I had done that decision, what you're doing today, at a younger age.
Yeah.
So I would like to support that dream of yours. So I opened my own office. And so my first office was open in Hudson, Mass.
Okay.
And that's another interesting story, because I knew, and I had a feeling if I reached out to my colleagues, I would have a couple cases here and there. But that was not just the case. It was like flooded with cases.
Really?
Because not only colleagues, but people I've helped in the past and that kept my number. And all of a sudden they're following my Facebook page.
Okay.
And then they're sending me
You're
clients.
Right. Yeah, I do want to say you have a very big Facebook following, and you do your Wednesday night live.
Yes.
You answer questions, and definitely it's an awesome thing that you do. Like you get a lot of engagement. I try to, when I see it, I try to or to tell people, but congratulations on that. That's really well done.
Thank you. And the Facebook page, it's actually something that it's organic. We don't advertise. We try to really kind of see what the need is. So like 2 weeks ago, I kept looking at the videos, like the progress. The last views there were like 17,000 views. And then last week we had less, but it just shows the consistency.
Yep.
And today I had a meeting in Framingham at an organization. I'm just walking, and I'm not really in Framingham that often.
Yep.
And then it's funny, it happens here and there. And this guy just looked at me. He's like, "Are you the attorney that does the Facebook Lives?" And I was like, "Oh, yes, I am."
That's great.
He's like, "I follow you." He's not a client. He's like, "I follow you. I love the videos. It's really informative. Please continue to do them." And I said, "Yeah, no, definitely," because it's really what I tell, and I say this on my lives.
Did he take a selfie with you?
No, come on, stop it. That would be funny. Yeah. But
you were going to say, sorry, you were going to say it's really what you continue to tell your clients.
Yeah.
You were going to say, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I say this on my Facebook Lives is the purpose of it is to educate. And I know that, there are people out there that are struggling, people that have lost jobs, people that are just trying to make it. And so there's a consultation fee, right? For, most of us attorneys, we do charge. So the Facebook Live is really geared to giving them that information that, they probably possibly would have gotten if they gone through a consultation. So it's like kind of giving back and generously as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. But and also, I think that's fine. I mean, you've dedicated yourself to service, and you also do a lot of pro bono, right? Is that correct?
Yes, we do pro bonos for detained cases. We do, low bonos as well, but I'm very passionate about detained cases. We worked with habeas corpus petitions before federal court. So with my immigration practice, I'm somewhat limited when a client is no longer eligible for a bond hearing. So
your camera just went off.
Oh, sorry. So in cases like the bond cases where a client is no longer eligible for a bond, we have to sometimes take a case up to federal court and request a petition before a federal judge if there's been prolonged detention, if there's been a violation of due process. And that's really caught the eye of the community.
Yeah.
As the firm, as it's growing, I've been getting more of these cases where people like, I've hired this attorney and he didn't present my bond case, didn't present my so-and-so. Sometimes it's a husband who's detained.
Right.
I never got to have my say in this case, or maybe because they've been for so long detained and immigration never executed their removal order. So they haven't removed this person. So it's inhumane to keep someone too long detained. And we also had a First Circuit case where we won a petition for review with the help
of with the ACLU.
With ACLU. And it's been a huge victory because this client's from El Salvador. It's the Ana Hernandez case. And interesting because I was not her immigration lawyer before the immigration judge. I was her appellate lawyer before the Board of Immigration, and we lost. And I was really bummed. I'm like, you know what? I even said to the clients, like, if you want to look for to do a First Circuit case, it's going to be quite hard, but we can do it. But I don't really see any hope on this. Then I get a call from an attorney from ACLU, and he really, really pushed me. And he said, you know what? Let's do this together. And we continue the case. And this case really talks about how, as a detainee, you're pretty much restricted in resources. So she was detained in New Hampshire. Her the list of attorneys she had in hand had only one attorney who spoke her language, which is Spanish. And the immigration judge on that case didn't give her the enough time she needed. And she had to complete an asylum application with the help of an inmate while she could barely speak Spanish herself. So she had to do it in English. She had like a 3rd grade level of education. So we really been very blessed. I can't say enough about the team at Celedon Law because we have people with different set of skills. We have ones that are good writers. We have others that are really wonderful thinkers, creative thinkers. So whenever I have a new staff or a new employee, I always ask them that question. Like, what is your passion? Is this what you want? Because with immigration law, especially the past few years, we had these very, very stressful, also very demanding type of work where, a lot of the benefits that immigrants had and were able to apply, if it's even more time in your case, if it's to get a green card without having to prove that they're not a burden, all these restrictions, orders that were coming from the previous president, making these cases a little bit more difficult. It was something that if you were practicing immigration law, it's because you really loved or at least enjoyed your work.
Because it's always like there's all these different like provisions, sunset provisions, and they're like things are always changing, and you really got to stay on top of that law. There's policies, there's memos from Immigration Services, which is USCIS. We have directives. And it's not only the INA, the Immigration Nationality Act, that we have to be on top. Cases, board cases, if we are in the first jurisdiction of the First Circuit, so we have to follow through what the cases are coming down regards to specific issues. It's a lot. It's really kind of, you compare it to like tax law. It can become complex, but it is doable. I always encourage law students, interns, new lawyers, or lawyers that are trying to find something else, to do, or thinking like, I wanted to do crim and I've done it for a few years, but I like to get into immigration. I strongly encourage it. Yeah. So like, what is your firm like now? How many employees do you have? So we're about almost 13. We have 3 attorneys. So that's 4 of us, including myself before. So
thankfully,
So
right?
do they bring in the business, or that people just call, or like how does that?
So my more of the senior associate, he does bring business in, which is great. He does also focus in business-based immigration. So folks that are being sponsored through work, an
Right.
employer. So that's great, because my goal is that everyone also has that share of the pie. So
Right.
what I always encourage my staff, I also look into bonuses. And I
Yep.
think it's always wonderful to share, and actually funny. I talking to an attorney the other day, and he was telling me his experiences, how his employer, he would see all these cases coming in, and all the attorneys, the associates, weren't getting any part of it, and how
Yeah.
they all left at the same time. And I said to myself, okay,
Yeah.
thankfully,
Yeah.
hopefully I have a little better plan than that.
Don't want to
But
do that. Yeah, that's
yeah, it's
great.
like, yeah. And that was kind of for me it was kind of more of an insight, where I'm like, okay, let's hope I won't make that mistake, because, and I think it all goes back to my principals and my parents. They've always been very generous.
Yep.
So obviously I'm not perfect, not even as an employer, but I do try my very best to be as equally fair as I possibly can.
Yeah, that's very nice. So you say you're like a good boss then, or is
Yeah.
that just one of the reasons that makes you like a good employer, a good boss? So you like to share, and I mean that's
Yeah,
great.
I like to share. I like to coach. I
Yeah.
like to be open. I have an open door policy. I like to, I tell my employees all the time. So we have team meetings on Mondays,
Yep.
and it's religiously. We open up with a funny story or something like, hey, how was your weekend? I'm going to play, because now we're doing Zoom meetings. And if someone's not sharing anything, I'm like, I'm going to do mini, 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 mo, and I'm going to pick
Yeah.
you. So tell me about your weekend.
Socratic method.
Oh yeah, I'm that kind of boss.
Wow.
And they're like, oh, and then we start off on a positive note.
Yeah.
And I always mention to them, like, we're in this together. We're all learning. We have people that have more experience than others. I just happen to start early, as as young, from what I've mentioned to you, because I fell into immigration. But we have people that are just starting out; they're just learning the basics.
Right.
So yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Congratulations on your success at your firm.
Thank you.
Is your firm all concentrated in Marlborough, or do you think you're? No, sorry.
So no, sorry about that. No, so Marlborough is where the office is located, but we have clients all over the world.
Okay, but your office is just so your office is just one place, Marlborough, but you will take clients from virtually anywhere, because once you're licensed in the state, it's federal law mostly, so you're able to take it from wherever it comes in, basically.
Yeah.
So
pre-COVID, I was traveling to Atlanta often for bond cases. I do cases in Arizona, Florida, California, Texas.
Yep.
So it's an interesting area of law where you can practice in other jurisdictions, but just having that license in one state.
So where do you see your firm in like 5 years?
In 5 years, because we are a firm that has also, it's more like that's what I'm gearing to, more of a boutique kind of firm, still serving those that are like we mentioned, we do pro bono, low bono cases. But in 5 years, I like to expand the business-based practice that we have. I would like to have a pro bono attorney in staff where we can have a higher concentration of pro bono cases. I think it's the way to go, because you can obviously continue the growth, but there's really no better feeling knowing that you're helping. Like, sometimes that we get cases from folks that are in shelters. And then you start thinking about, okay, I have a roof over my head. I know where I'm sleeping tonight. And it's nice to have that feeling where you're giving back, because it does come back tenfold when you give back.
So what you put out in the world comes back, sort of thing.
Yes, 100%. There's never been a time where I said, hey, why did I do this? There's always something that comes back that's and just seeing that family or seeing that single mom or dad and see that smile and that child's eyes, know that they're
Yeah.
going to have that money for food, and
Right.
and you're able to say, because we done where a client would come for a consultation, and I'll start asking questions, and then I come to find out that they're sleeping at someone's house, and that they're really struggling financially. And then before they leave, and I try to do it secretly, I'll say to my staff, please refund the consultation fee.
Yeah.
And then you see that big smile, and then they'll say, no, you don't have. And then I'm like, no, just do
Yeah.
it, because
That's
it's
nice.
really rewarding.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's very important work, and it's very rewarding.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm curious, like, you're a businesswoman, like, what was the hardest part of starting and maintaining a business? Like, if you don't have like that business background,
Okay.
learning
So
things like learning how to pay like your employee, like the payment systems and like all that stuff. I mean,
yeah, no, good question. So when I started, for the first 2 months, it was just me. Then I employed my sister, and I have a story on that. Before I employed my sister, I say this to everyone, I had like $1,200 to start the firm.
Yep.
It was the only savings I had. To think about, I was single parenting. At the time, things were, just okay, but that's all I had.
Yep.
$1,200. I had the money for the rent for the first month. And 2 months in, I had, obviously cases coming in. So I employed my sister, who at the time had been pretty much she's worked for like over 20 years at a local hospital. So she had a severance package. So she was kind of living life, right?
Yep.
And I said, hey, I'm going to cut that short for a bit. You're going to come work with me, because I need help with the phones. I need help with invoices. Within a few months, I hired my very first secretary, because then my sister became kind of like someone who was just going to take care of the finances. And whenever a new lawyer, and I actually just yesterday, I was talking to a law school. She's in her last year, and she's thinking about opening her own office in the near future. And this, I mentioned, don't ever take responsibilities that as a lawyer, you should be delegating, like answering calls, invoicing, managing the firm, because all that, it's very tempting for a lawyer to wanting to save money. Well, and I've talked to colleagues who are like, well, but I don't know if I can afford the secretary, but you will. You just have to take that act of faith. And when you have that secretary, you're going to feel so much better, because now you have more time to focus on your cases, on your clients, because clients can become needy. And, you need to be, taking that time to network with your colleagues. You have, family, so you need that family time. So one of the things that I've always had, and I still do this business model, is continued growth, obviously in a very conservative way, as slowly, because over the years we have slowly added people in. And in a way that's solid, because obviously you want people to feel like they have a future and their security.
Yep.
So my advice to interns and new lawyers is, for the first few months, get yourself acquainted with what it's like to have an office, but do make plans to have, an administrative staff that's strong, that meets the need of the client. So if you're in an immigration practice and you're serving the Latino community or the, Asian community, whatever community, your ethnicity or languages you're serving, make sure that your administrative staff speaks that language.
Yep.
Because that's the way to go. And that's how you're going to see growth, because people want to be where they can feel they're getting communications clear, they're getting the services that they hired. Because that's really, as you know, and when we started for the ethics exam, the number one complaint is lack of communication with the lawyer, right? Yep. Clients where they fire a lawyer, or there's BBO complaints because there's lack of communication. And sometimes it's a language barrier. And so I'm very adamant that you always have to make sure you have that need met with the client needs. So.
Wow. So that makes me think of another question. Like, what community are you mostly representing? I know you speak Spanish, right?
Yes, so I speak Spanish and Portuguese. So I have, variety. We have Europeans. My key clients, I mentioned this, are my English clients. So people are like, well, what do you mean English clients? So it's very common to see Europeans where they enter the US as legal permanent residents, but never renewed their green cards or ever became US citizens. Okay. Because throughout their childhood and adulthood, they thought they were Americans. So those are the interesting cases that I've gotten over the years. So the reason why they come to that truth, like I'm not an American US citizen yet, it's because now, how we have the Real ID Act, they have to renew their license. So all their IDs, all their documentation have to be up to date. So they're like, I don't know why RMV won't accept my green card. I'm like, because it's expired and expired like 40 years ago.
Right.
So now we have to get your citizenship. And they're like, wow. I didn't know. My entire life, I thought I was an American. So we do have, variety.
That's wild.
Yeah. But we do have, I would say about 70% of my clients are Brazilians. Okay. And that's the primary ethnicity that we serve. We have folks coming in for either green cards or asylum. We have folks that have been here for so long, so they have children and now they're before an immigration judge and they're fighting what we call cancellation of their removal. So they have to show to an immigration judge that if they're removed from the US, their children who are US citizens are going to suffer, and in the standards, exceptional and unusual hardship. So it's above ordinary. It's beyond the extreme. So those are the complex cases, which I absolutely love. And
wow. So well, you could tell you're very passionate about what you do, about helping.
Thank you, Ben.
It seems like it's a really, you found the right fit. So that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So what else do you want to tell that I didn't get to? Like, is there anything else that you would want to tell the Lawyer Stories community? I think I don't have any questions left.
You don't have any questions for
on my paper? I don't have any questions left. We covered a lot of ground since when your arrival to Cold Mass.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love. By the way, I love the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
When I came across you, I was, because as lawyers, sometimes we're just about the client story, right? About how we can help them, how we can serve them. But through the work you're doing, you're giving us a little bit of that spotlight. And sometimes, others need to know that we have a story too.
Right.
And there's a reason why we chose this profession. And it is a profession that has to do with service and being, selfless and dedication to improving the quality of life of others. So I guess what I could share and that we haven't talked about would be, it's just, I really hope that as a community of lawyers, we can continue to do this and continue to get together, inspire soon to be lawyers and law interns, and stand out our hand for those that are looking for opportunities, and just continue that work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I hope, I plan to keep growing it as much as I can for Lawyer Stories, and I hope it assists people. And, it's been tremendous, like meeting people from everywhere. And hey, you're only like less than an hour away. So that's pretty cool. So
did we just mention earlier that I was in your neck of the woods?
You were literally a walk around the corner from me where my office is. You were at a hearing today. So
yeah, I was actually at a warrant recall. So we had a call where someone had a warrant. So I had to actually drive there like a,
a warrant recall.
Like a Wonder Woman, right? Like,
interesting.
I got you.
All part of the job, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Especially difficult times with the pandemic. It's been challenging.
How has your firm changed? Have you had people remote?
Oh Lord. So during like the start of the pandemic, it was a crisis. And this actually forced us to get more tech savvy. And I highly recommend for those that were like me, and I'm still like in that transition where I'm more of like a paper, let's open our files, let's write in our notes. But it's forced us, there has been some positive change. It's forced us to work more digitally, work, closely. Now we have our Zoom meetings, and it's cutting down that whole, like, let's get together for meetings, but I'm also for getting togethers. But so one of the negatives, I would say, obviously less, at the time we couldn't really meet with clients, and that was difficult because meeting with clients is one of the things I actually enjoy. But over time, we were able to actually also, you have to teach the, clients that are not tech savvy too, right? So those that couldn't do Zoom, we had to do WhatsApp. Thank God for WhatsApp. Yeah, it's very helpful.
Like phone calls.
Yeah, phone calls. And now that immigration didn't have one big change, and this is actually a very, something that we've always asked the court to do, was to do Zoom videos for hearings, because every other court they had already initiated, like district court and Mass have all initiated the Zoom videos, but immigration court. So that's actually interesting enough, just about 2 months, immigration court initiated their practice of using videos, which is interesting because everyone, was already on board with that close to a year ago. And just now we have that option. So there has been some pros and cons, but when the whole pandemic started, most of our employees were working from home. Mm-hmm. I was in the office with one employee, which was my brother. He's one of the managers there. And he was answering calls. He was like the to-go.
He was doing everything.
Yep. And then my sister, who continues to work for our firm. So it's like almost like a business firm. We're going back to what my dad.
And this is your older brother and your older sister, right?
Yeah, older brother. Isn't that funny?
That's
so
great.
my colleagues were like, how do you do that? Like, how do you work with your siblings? I'm like, you know what? It works well. I mean, it's always, I think we've always been doing things together.
That's great. Yeah.
And, don't ever listen to others, right? Do what works for you.
No,
and if it works to work with your family.
Well, you guys were a band. You guys were in a band earlier in life. And obviously your parents raised you right. I mean, in a way that you
thank you, Ben.
You can collaborate and cooperate.
Yes. And we each have a skill. And it's interesting how we each cover. Like my sister had the finances, my brother has more of the client relations. He does the media, he does the client contact, employee training. And obviously I do the legal work, and I just couldn't see it's a dream job, honestly.
So he does employee training too, is that what you said?
So during the pandemic, he had to pretty much find himself doing what the employees were doing, pretty much the administrative employees. He doesn't train the legal staff. He trains like the front desk, the employee that does the filing, does the scanning of docs. So front desk is really what I tell everyone. It's the most critical position you could ever have, and it's actually the one that I'm always very careful who to employ, because that's where clients have that very first encounter.
Right. It's the face of the franchise.
It's face for the franchise. Yeah, that's correct. And I always mention to people, especially the new employees, is whoever walks in the door. To me, if it's like a client who's in housekeeping or a medical doctor, we treat them all the same, and everyone deserves respect and kindness. Yep. So front desk, to me, you have to be super friendly, transparent, helpful. And so during the pandemic, we couldn't have anyone but my family, right? Because we've already, see each other. It's, we can be close to each other.
Right. You were in your bubble.
Oh yeah. That was our bubble. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, wow. All right. This was awesome. I learned a lot about you and your firm. I really appreciate you coming on and being a part of our Lawyer Stories community. How can everybody get in touch with you?
So more than happy to communicate via email. So it'd be my first name, Eloa at Celedon Law. They can reach me phone number as well. The firm is 508-573-3170. If anyone's ever around, love to grab coffee, ever around. You know, I know a lot of the viewers are probably out of state, but if you're ever in Boston, stop by the office. Love to connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your story with us. And stay right there. But everybody else, thanks for tuning in. And wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves. Cheers.
Thank you.